Hello, welcome to this webinar about the coming release of Blue Open Studio 2023.1. And today we're presenting a technical webinar about this subject. Open Studio version 2023.1 release. Of course, we're going to get into the overall features. The main feature to this software, kind of a smaller release with a larger impact with this Python edition, and then of course we'll talk about the other features. Okay, so here's a bulleted list of all the different features that are in the new version. You can see we're going to go through these individually, so just going to leave this up here for a second. Okay, so starting off, what we're going to talk about is the new firmware for the HMI runtime IoT box. Okay, so currently we are on a lower version than one is going to get released here. There will be a version 1. The version currently is 1.1.1, and there'll be a new version. I don't have the version number in here right now. The main thing is it's supporting a secure connection, so that is going to be a big change from 2023 and even 2020. So currently with the firmware that's released, that's not a secure connection. And then another huge part is the higher speed download. Okay. All right. So Python. So this is, like I said, so this is the noteworthy release for 2023.1. Okay. So what we're doing is we're providing an open, popular, platform agnostic scripting language. Okay. It's supported, key point, supported in both the HMI runtime and the Windows runtime. So this is going to be a great addition to the IoT box users. Today we're stuck with the built-in language. Now we have a full-blown editor with the Python. Okay. Okay. And again, it's not running, and we'll show this graphically what this looks like is why it's not supported in the. Okay. Okay. So in further slides we'll discuss what this point here means. It's based on CPython 3.11. It does include the standard Python libraries, and additional libraries can be imported. It has Python IntelliSense and code completion. Okay, so this is basically what it looks like. So if you look here, basically the way we're linking to any HMI tag or functions is through the HMI name space, so to speak. So any HMI dot and then the different things, either the functions or the tags. Okay, again, here's the link to the external modules. That's a link to the standard libraries. Okay, and again, so what we're talking about is we're running, the Python is only running in background scripts, startup, and global procedures. Okay, that's the only place, so no graphic scripts. So that's the point about it not working in the viewers. Okay, main point to this release is the enabling more functionality in the HMI IoT box, right? So now we'll have the ability to do email. That's a standard, that's part of the standard library. FTP will be, and we'll also, like I said, be able to export external modules. Okay, so this is where we got into, so here are again, so linking to tags and functions. So there's only certain functions available through Python. So you can see over here in this chart on the right, you have HMI trace, HMI shutdown, get at path, get product path, and then really the meat of this is down here at the bottom, where you have HMI force tag change, get tag value, and set tag value. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so here we are in Blue Open Studio 2023.1, and the first thing that we'll look at is I will go to the Tasks tab here, and now what you'll see, if you expand the script folder, you'll now see that we have a Python folder. So when we expand the Python folder, this is where we get a startup script that's available to us in Python. So if you open up the Python editor, you can watch what this looks like. Okay, so now that you can see, here I am in the Python editor, and we'll just very simply, just to kind of show you what this environment looks like, I'll just go ahead and just type in the HMI dot, and now what you can see is here are all the items related to HMI, right? The force tag value, get at path, right? All those functions that we talked about previously. So like, for example, if I say force tag value, okay, so now that you can see I've entered the HMI.force tag change. What I'll show you here is this is the hover part that we talked about. So now if I hover over this command, you could see I could see the full documentation for that particular command. Okay, and then so then just to carry that a step further, if we're going to say, so now if we want to reference a tag from the HMI piece, that's going to be done in quotations. Okay, and then you have to basically, there is no browse into the tag system. You have to know what the tag name is. Okay, comma, space. And it's very important in Python, the spacing is important. Okay, so there's an example of some code. Okay, so that's what that part of it looks like. So let me just go ahead, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that code for now. Let me go ahead and close the startup script. I'll say no. Okay, and then what you'll see here is I've actually got I want to illustrate what the difference is between set and force. Okay, so what you'll see here, you'll see in this trigger, I'm just basically, in this case, I'm actually calling a function. And this is the HMI, and then I'm just basically turning the trigger back off. Remember, the code will run as long as the trigger is on. This code will repeat itself. Okay, and then the force just simply looks like this. Okay. Okay, so that's talking about our basically this is the startup in the background task part of the Python engine here. So I'm going to go ahead and close these down. And then I want to go take a look at the procedures. And what you'll see is now when I go to the global tab under procedures, now I'm going to see a new Python entry for procedures. And if I just double click on procedures, you'll see how this is done. So it's just a simple DEF statement to my function. So you'll see here I have a my function set. So I'm just doing a set tag value, and I'm doing a force tag change. So the difference is a set tag value will only set the tag value to the value that you want if this value is new. So if it knows that the PLC value, for example, is 123, it will actually not send the 123. Where on the other hand, what a force tag change does is that just simply says that regardless of the value, go ahead and perform that write. So we're just going to go ahead and use the watch window real quick to go ahead and see what that looks like. And you'll see, so basically what I have is my trigger 1 is my simply my set, and my trigger 2 is the force. Okay, and if you look at the way I've got the watch window set up, I'm watching the commands, and I'm just putting a date and time stamp on there. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, so let's go ahead and run the project. Okay, I don't have any screens, so you can see, let's just watch the watch window. We're connecting to my PLC, and you could see now we're going to just continuously read that item because here it is in my watch window, basically reading this tag. So what that looks like in the driver sheet is it just simply looks like this. So if I go to the main driver sheet, here's my tag name, here's the station. I'm just using node name. Okay, and then here I've got my IO address. Okay, go ahead and close that. So you could see I'm continuously running. Okay, so now you could see the value is 123. So if I go ahead and change that to something else, okay, you could see, of course, it wrote it. And my trigger, my set tag value to 123 should work. Okay, there's my 123. My trigger went off. Now, and there's my write. Now you can see what I'll do is let me trigger this again and let that I'll let that one write value get out of view here. Okay, there's the top, so I'm going to trigger it again. And you can see the trigger went back off, but there was no write performed. Where now if I try the force, I go to 1, and there you can see it wrote, even though the value was 123, it forced the driver to write the 123. Okay, so just wanted to show that has a real quick example of how the Python editor worked, and then just a little short example of how it will interact with the driver. Okay, so back to the presentation. All right, so that was just like I said, that was an example of force tag change versus set tag value. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, a little bit more about Python again. So this is the scripting overview, right? So this is telling us again background scripts, startup, and global procedures, right? So what you'll see is that Python, like VBScript, uses global procedures, right? As you know, where you're defining a function with VBScript, it's a sub function. Background task, startup script in Python, and then script 1 through script 999. Nothing in the graphic modules for Python. And also notice that Python can only call Python today. Okay. Again, so showing a little bit more here. Here's the startup and background scripts part that we talked about. Okay. Global procedures. This is the define. Okay. Taking some, again, now getting into some other functions that have been added in 2023.1, some more grid object performance improvements in mobile access, some tree view. There's a tree view custom widget that comes with the install of Blue Open Studio. There's been some improvements done to that. You can see them here. Then again, industrial graphics improvements, further SVG import features, and that's all documented in the release notes. Okay, all right, Kate. Now, another kind of important point, again, in an HMI, this is another HMI runtime improvement, and that is previously in the HMI runtime, you had no, like you have it in the Windows box when you are doing trending/logging, you have this ability to say how many days of data are you going to actually store. If you say 0, it will just store data till forever, basically until it runs out of space, which maybe on a big hard drive is not such a big deal, but when we talk about the HMI runtime, when we have a limited amount of memory, etc., then this becomes a little bit more important. Okay. And then I put the tip down here is, yes, you have there's some optional functions to redirect trend alarms and other events to other locations. Okay, so looking at it a little bit about that memory size in the box, basically what you're starting, what you can see here is at the end of the day, you do have the choice to install Python or not. So, for example, if you don't need Python, you can save quite a bit of memory here. So you could see when you see with Python, you've got about, in your application area, you've got about 107 megabytes free after installing the runtime with Python. And then without Python, you could see quite a bit more space, almost 25% more. Okay. There are some commands to see how much space you need. Is a little bit on a Windows box. It's easier to define where that free space is. Here's the information about where these commands to get the amount of free space, and you can see there's basically 2 areas that we are looking at, and each one of these areas has about 220 megabytes allocated to it. So you could see, so the one area is for where all the data is stored, so the trend and event loggers and alarms, and then the other area is where the runtime in the project is stored. Okay. All right, moving on, talking about, so again, in the HMI runtime, before we only could support the main driver sheet. We had no ability to use standard driver sheets in the HMI runtime, which was not such a huge problem, but was a little bit didn't give us all the flexibility that we necessarily needed. For example, when using MQTT, it's a little bit, in my opinion, it's a little better, easier to keep things organized when you can have standard driver sheets maybe a little bit easier to keep the topics organized, etc. And then what you can see here is here's the big difference between, the main driver sheet and the standard driver sheets. You've actually got a lot more commands available to you to control what the driver's doing. Okay. All right. Another HMI improvement, tag integration in drivers, right? So in that little example, that's exactly what I was doing. I was using tag integration with the CodeAssist driver to a 262. So you could see we now have tag integration in the HMI platform for RS Logix and 5000 family, older Allen Bradley processors, the CodeAssist driver, and then OPC UA servers with the OPC UA client driver that's built in. Okay, so basically new drivers that are being added to Windows, these are legacy. These are actually going to be considered legacy drivers because currently they were developed before we made the platform change. So ultimately these will be out of legacy and considered non-legacy and installed without having to accept the terms, etc. Okay, but here's the first release of those legacy drivers for Hitachi PLCs and Mitsubishi MS LMP. Okay, and then last part is drivers moving from legacy to fully released, right? So in 2023, these drivers were considered part of the legacy package. So ABB Total Flow, basically AB DF1 for legacy Allen Bradley PLCs, the Soul Machine protocols being moved off legacy, DNP3, the XVGU Harmony Tower Light, and BACnet Slave. Okay. All right. So thank you for watching this presentation about Blue Open Studio version 2023.1. Thank you.